Okay, this is an old story that I've been editing again. It is titled There is Nothing Interesting About Angels, and this is the first chapter. There is nothing interesting about angels. You would think there would be. You might be right if you had time, patience, and a desire to watch things unfold at the speed of molasses. If you were a modern human, trained by doorbells, deadlines, and glowing rectangles, you would be disappointed with the entertainment value of most angels. Over the years, Cecilia had come to revel in the small shifts and changes in her roommate Chloe's life. Chloe, which was short for something Cecilia would never try to pronounce, would stand there, stiff and bemused, as Cecilia exuberantly celebrated something as minute as a day that Chloe had left a mug to air dry, instead of whatever it was that she usually did. Cecilia never did see exactly what Chloe did when she washed the dishes, but she would turn around, and the whole kitchen shone as if newly built. The cups and plates would disturb Cecilia slightly every time she opened the cupboard, as if they shouldn't be touched, at least until she had used them a few times and they were restored to their familiar faded and chipped appearance. Any slight shift towards something less than perfect always delighted Cecilia. She would pour Chloe a glass of wine, kiss her cheek, and tell her that she should shake things up more often. Chloe would tilt her head slightly and gaze calmly at her until Cecilia blushed and turned away, her playful grin faltering into a puzzled frown. This afternoon the sun was shining into the living room and jazz music was playing on the radio. Cecilia had just arrived home from work and Chloe was staring at the wall. Cecilia didn't ask. She was looking somewhere far from here, observing something boring to do with something very important. Cecilia went into the kitchen, paused with the fridge door open, and sighed quietly as she started pulling out things from the fridge. Chloe had done the grocery shopping again. There was nothing wrong with the things Chloe had purchased. She had clearly listened when Cecilia had asked her to purchase more fresh vegetables. There was one of each kind placed precisely an inch apart on the shelves: eggplant, cucumber, green pepper, a carrot, an artichoke, and a single snap pea. There were other things in the fridge too, things Cecilia did not recognize, but each of them was clearly at the height of possible freshness. She hesitated as she reached for the cucumber, catching sight of what looked like a curl of a vine. She shook her head, and the optical illusion faded. They don't sell cucumbers on the vine. She started some rice in the rice cooker and began to dice the vegetables. Chloe had started to hum. Cecilia stopped to listen. She had to stop. If she hadn't stopped, she probably would have cut herself. The sound always made her head tingle and made her mind drift. When Chloe hummed in the evening, it helped Cecilia drift off to sleep. Her dreams were bizarre and involved sacred geometry and strange epiphanies that made sense until the moment Cecilia woke up. She often had the thought that she had made important discoveries during the night. As her feet contacted the cold floor, the impression was lost amid her morning quest for socks and coffee, not necessarily in that order. "If you are going to hum," she called out, "can you take over the chopping, please?" Then Chloe was there, and thankfully she had the fast reflexes to avoid getting cut by the knife that Cecilia stuck out in her general direction. She took the knife and gently directed Cecilia away from the cutting board, chopping the pepper and humming. Cecilia swayed and reached out a hand to steady herself on the chair back as she considered the mechanics of sitting. Work was nuts. I brought home wine. She waved vaguely toward the paper bag on the counter. Chloe hummed, and the knife on the board took on a cadence that brought to mind the thrums Cecilia often heard when the hummingbirds visited their covered porch. She blinked to clear her vision as the rhythm ceased. "How was your day?" Her mind felt fuzzy, and her voice echoed strangely in her head. Chloe washed the knife, dried it, and put it away. She did not answer the question, but Cecilia knew the answer would come if she waited. Some questions took time to answer. She was startled when Chloe spoke. It seemed loud, until Cecilia realized that Chloe was now seated directly beside her, the wine open and a glass in her hand. "What did you dream last night?" Cecilia lifted the glass in her hand and took a small sip. "I can't remember." "You should start paying attention." "Maybe you can help me remember." Cecilia discovered she had finished her wine and reached out to pour another, offering to refill Chloe's as well. Chloe tilted her glass to show that it was mostly full. "Is that permission?" She gulped the next swallow. Maybe after I've had more wine. Chloe stood, glided into the living room, and returned her gaze to the wall, but she didn't seem to be as distant as before. Some part of her was paying close attention as Cecilia's eyes drifted to the cutting board. Cecilia flew to her feet too quickly, and she had to grab the chair again. "Holy fucking shit, Chloe," she shouted. "What did you do to the vegetables?" Cecilia stared at the elaborate display her roommate had created on the counter. Chloe flicked her gaze toward the kitchen, then back to the wall. "I chopped the vegetables." "How did you manage to cut the pepper into those shapes?" Feeling steadier with the surge of adrenaline kicking through her, Cecilia took a few steps out of the kitchen. "You know I was just going to fry the vegetables." Chloe's forehead wrinkled slightly, but she didn't turn around. "Do the shapes get in the way of frying?" "No." Cecilia turned in a daze to look again at the intricately textured and vibrantly colored mandala on the cutting board. The pepper had been cut into thin red crescents, nested around the carrot like petals. The snap piece sat in the corner, unopened and absurdly important. Cecilia smiled ruefully. "No, not at all." She put up a hand as if to forestall a response that she knew would never come. "Please, go back to whatever you were doing." Dinner was eaten in companionable silence. Cecilia ghosted a kiss on Chloe's cheek and headed for the bath. Chloe's resumed humming vibrated the bathwater and pulsed through Cecilia's soles as she dried off and while she brushed her teeth. Cecilia snagged her notebook from the bookshelf and dropped it onto her bedside table. Did she really want to remember what would come next? If she did, she could write it down. She probably wouldn't, but she could. She tumbled into her bed and dropped instantly to sleep, a wet towel draped across her legs and the blanket half-heartedly pulled over her shoulders. The dreams were much like the dreams she was used to having. They were not delivering a message so much as a structure, a grammar too large for language. She understood one corner of it, and that was enough to hurt. She tried to pay close attention, but she knew it was impossible to hold any of it. She felt ready to give up trying when something shifted. She realized that the symbols weren't as foreign as she had thought at first. She knew them as well as she knew the English alphabet, but what they were telling her was too much. She sat up in bed, tears coursing down her cheeks. "Chloe!" Her friend appeared at the door and flowed into the room. She took a seat at the foot of the bed. "What did you do?" Cecilia swiped the still damp towel away and struggled to sit up. "The dreams were different this time. I remembered something." Chloe tilted her head with the still attention of a cat observing a mouse it had no intention of chasing. "Not a thing, Cecilia. You did not permit me." Cecilia considered this for a moment. "Why do you need my permission?" Cecilia smiled. "I don't. But I prefer to have it. I am your friend, and I do not want to violate the trust you placed in me." Cecilia reached out a hand, and Chloe held it for a moment. "Go back to sleep." She gently stroked Cecilia's short brown hair. "How do I understand this?" Cecilia half mumbled, already drifting to sleep. Chloe sighed. Cecilia was asleep before she could ask what the sigh meant.